It's Devin with MVP Sport Fishing and Real Action Charters. Today I want to talk a little bit about limiting variables and how that can lead to catching more fish. It's simple math. The more variables there are, the harder it is to replicate. And on a daily basis, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get a couple bites so we can replicate it across all of our other lines. Before I really jump into that, I just want to say that in order to limit your variables, you have to try different things and figure out what you have confidence in and what works for you. Once you get supreme confidence in one of these variables, then maybe you can eliminate it. Don't just eliminate it or make it a certain length because someone on the internet says so. Don't do it just because I say I have let's say a 20-foot diver lead, and don't only use a couple flies because I say I only use a couple flies. You have to figure out what works for you. So think about all the variables within your gear, and we're not even, for the sake of this, going to think about environmental variables. We're just thinking about the variables of your gear, and every little one matters. So in things that I have standardized or limited, would be the leader length of my divers. All my divers, the leader is the same length. All my boards, the leader is the same length. Different from my divers, but all my board rods, so my lead cores, my coppers, or if you're using steel, whatever it may be, same length. All my flies, same leader length. We've talked about beads. All my beads are the same. They're either clear or a very specific color to go with a specific fly. I can do that because I only use a couple flies. I've found a couple that I can basically get to work on any given day, either one or the other. So I'm able to do that a little bit with beads. Otherwise, you can just pick the same beads, or you can be crazy with beads. That's up to you. Diver color, also something that I've limited. All my divers are the same color. All my leaders are the same pound test and the same kind of line, and I say that meaning that all my diver leaders are the same pound test and the same kind of line, and then separately all my boards are a different pound test but all the same, and flies the same thing. Each group is identical. All the way down into the hooks and the swivels. Swivels more so for spoons, I feel like it matters, but even hooks on your flies, that can play a little bit of a difference. Let's say you got a size 1, just a normal hook on some, and at some point you bought some 4X strong, even of the same hook. Well, that 4X strong is strong for a reason. It has more metal, it's going to weigh more, your fly's not going to move as much. Even something as simple as that can matter. So for an example of this, let's say my first 2 bites in the morning were on the same pole. It's a diver and it has a flasher and fly on it. Let's think about all the variables just within that. There's the diver color, there's the length of the diver lead, there's the swivel, which in this case I don't think matters a whole lot, just because it's a flasher. I don't think a bigger or a smaller swivel per se is going to make them bite or not bite. I think that's more so if you're running a spoon. Going back a little bit here, you have the pound test of your diver leader. You have obviously the flasher. Then you have, the whole components of your fly leader, your beads, your hook, and the actual fly itself. Now, because I have standardized basically all of that except for the color of the flasher and the color of the fly, I can then replicate that on the other side very easily. It doesn't mean it's going to work. It means it gives me the best odds that it's going to work. If that was a green flasher with a green fly, I can now take that and put it on the diver, one of my divers on the other side, and it's going to be identical except for, let's say I used a different green flasher. So it's the same fly, different green flasher. All the other components are the same. Now, if my stuff was different on the other side, if my diver lead was half as long and my diver color was different, even if I put the same bait on that side, it's not replicating it. The whole system, the whole process of it is different. It's got a shorter lead. That flasher's probably not quite getting as big of a rotation. The longer you have it, the bigger rotation you're going to get. It doesn't just get exponentially bigger, but it does get a little bigger. And the diver color, if I got a black diver on one side and a chrome and blue one on the other, There's just a different presentation. There's more colors in the water. One's going to be better, one's going to be worse. Just allows you to have more variables and not be able to replicate it as good. So if everything that you can get the same is the same, then you can swap stuff around and really only worry about the colors of the baits, which everybody thinks about anyways. Everybody thinks just because say I'm getting them on a bloody nose that they can put a bloody nose out and it's going to be the same. Well, it's not. Every two baits are created different. No two are the same. And, you know, just the little things of it really play a factor. So it would be the same thing on a 200 copper. If I got a 200 copper with a spoon that's working right away, well, then I want to be able to mimic that on my other board rods. But if my other board rods have different leader lengths, you know, one's 20 feet, one's 40 feet, one's 50 feet, they're going to have different actions. The longer that leader is, the more that it kind of takes out of the action of the copper or the lead core, depending on which one it is. You have to figure out where that sweet spot is for you and be able to mimic that across all of them. And then swivels is kind of where I feel like swivels is more important. If I got a little, I don't know sizes of swivels very well, but let's say I have a smaller swivel on the one that's going, but my 200 on the other side, or my 150 or 10 color or whatever it is, and I put a similar spoon on there, but it's got a bigger swivel on it, and it's just not working. Well, it could be because of the swivel. It goes all the way back to all of the little variables. You have to think about them all. It's not just about bait colors. That's kind of what I wanted to kind of reinforce here with this. You have to figure out what works for you. Don't just do it because someone else did it. You don't want to eliminate things that might work for you. But can you catch fish if everything is different, if all your leaders are different, if you have 4 different diver colors in the water? Yeah, absolutely you can. But it just becomes harder to replicate. You can't fine-tune anything. You can't just be like, okay, I was catching them on green and green over here, let me put green and green over there, because it becomes a completely different setup. And that's basically why when you try to fish somebody else's program, because let's say Joe is getting them again, I can't go fish his program because I'll never know all of the little things of his entire spread, and all of those little things matter. So you have to figure out what works for you and go from there. The more you have that is standardized or similar across aspects on your boat, it doesn't have to be all aspects, but group things. Your riggers, there's a group. Your divers are a group. Your boards are a group. Your flies are a group. The more stuff that you can standardize in each one of those groups, the easier everything is going to be to replicate. If you have any questions or anything you want to hear me talk about, just leave a comment or send me a message. Otherwise, check us out. MVP Sport Fishing on Facebook, Real Action Charters on Facebook. Otherwise, we'll see you on the next one.